But then I really started to think about what is our responsibility as men towards the women in our lives, the mothers in our lives, the sisters, the daughters, the wives. And so God kind of just brought me to this idea of, as men, one of our responsibilities is to leave a legacy of honor. All right, so we're going to take a look at that today, a legacy of honor. I did commit one of the cardinal sins of preaching, and I did not I did not check my PowerPoint against the print is kind of small, and I apologize on that one. But let's take a look at that. First of all, our core idea for today. Our core ideal is, and so we're beginning at the top there. It says, a biblical honor is not a posture that men adopt toward women. It is a practice that they learn from Christ. Seeing clearly, serving sacrificially, and protecting fiercely. So biblical honor is not a posture. It is not a posture that we're just going to adopt. It's not a show. Biblical honor is a practice. It is the active practice that we learn from Christ. So as I prepared this week, I started to think, well, okay, Christ had a mother. How did Jesus treat his mother? How did Jesus treat his mother? Now, we know that Jesus was perfect. And in that, there are a ton of examples that we can find, not only how Jesus treated his mother, but as we go through the Gospels, how did Jesus treat the women around him? And so let's first of all define, what are we talking about honor? So we're saying that we have to have a legacy of honor. Well, what is that? We have to have this legacy of honor. Honor defined is recognizing and responding. Let's see, there, no, sorry. Honor is recognizing and responding to the worth of something or someone. Recognizing and responding to the worth of something or someone. It has the idea of seeing the worth, the value. If I had a gold bar, I would recognize the value of that gold bar. I would honor it. All right? This idea of honor encompasses our need to respect, esteem, and regard the functioning as both the internal attitude. So what is my internal attitude towards the women in my life? But not only the internal attitude, but what is my external practice? What is my external, what do I do? Oftentimes we have that saying, my actions speak louder than my words. I can say that I honor my wife. I can say that I honor my mom. I can say that I honor my daughters and the women around me. But what do my actions say? All right, so those actions are seen. I'm going to see them clearly. I'm going to serve sacrificially. And I am going to protect them fiercely. So I wanted to dive in. What was the culture that Jesus was bringing in? What is Jesus' attitude towards women? Well, when we first think about the Jewish religion, the Jewish traditions at the time, the culture at the time, the Jewish tradition of women at this point in time was very deeply misogynistic. Let me give you some examples of that. In rabbinic sayings, it declared that 100 women are no better than 2 men. They described women as a pitcher full of filth. Most rabbis repeatedly stressed that women's inferiority in their teaching, and rabbis' teaching compared women to objects. One rabbi likened his wife to a piece of meat that was brought from the shambles. So we take all of these ideas together. Women were not held in high regard in Jesus' time. But how did Jesus respond to women? Did he respond like this, or did he respond differently? And so as we search through the word today, we're going to see Jesus' radical contrast with the prevailing thought and the prevailing idea of women at the time. Jesus approached women very differently. A couple of examples. We think through the Gospels. The Syrophoenician woman, the woman anointed Jesus' feet with the broke the alabaster box. What did Jesus do? He did not chastise her. Did not shriek back in fear. He praised her for it. All right, we have the healing of Jairus' daughter. We have the woman who was touched the hem of his garment. I like that story because in that story, in that account, what we have is a woman who is approaching Jesus, knowing that Jesus is the only one that can heal. Jesus is the only one that has the power to do what needs to be done. And she sees Jesus for who he is, and Jesus responds in like kind. We have Mary sitting at his feet, learning. Back in the day, women did not sit at the feet of a rabbi. That was unheard of. But Jesus did not send her away. We have the Samaritan woman at the well. We have the woman that's caught in adultery. In all of these pictures, we have Jesus treating women with dignity and honor. Not casting them aside, not berating them, not talking down to them, and not being condescending towards them. And the last example that I thought about was Jesus' care for his mother. Think about that. On the cross, Jesus was even thinking about his mother. In every case, Jesus saw what others refused to see. He saw a person that was stamped with the image of God, worthy of attention, worthy of truth, and worthy of restoration. All right, so before we talk about that, what I wanted to go is take your Bible, go with me to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Genesis 1:27, please. In Genesis 1:27, let's see what Moses records for us there. In Genesis 1:27, it says, "So God created man in his own image." So we are going through the creation narrative. God creates man in his own image. In the image of God created he them. What's next? Male and female. So what we see is that God creates women as in his own image. So what is the point? Imagio Dei. What we find is that God makes a declaration about the nature of every woman. Every woman in your life, every woman that we encounter is made in his image. And if that woman is made in his image, they deserve just as much recognition, they deserve just as much honor as any other man in my life. So, what's the point? So let's bring it down close to home. Let's go down to the New Testament and flip with me to 1 Peter 3:7. 1 Peter 3:7. In 1 Peter 3:7, it says, you may know, it says, "Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife, as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together with the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered." So when we talk about, when we look at what Peter is saying here, Peter does not call the woman to be a servant or subordinate. Peter is saying that the woman is a co-heir. A co-heir. So the co-heir is a legal term. That legal term means that she has the same claim, the same standing, and the same inheritance before God. The same claim, the same standing, and the same inheritance before God. 1 Peter 3:7 does not call for us, as was the culture of the time, to put women down. Well, why? Because women are created in the image of God, just as he said in Genesis. This idea is not Peter's invention. It's really the logical conclusion of how Jesus treated women throughout his ministry. As we already looked at previously, Jesus taught and Jesus treated women with high regard and high respect. He defended the women publicly. He chose women, this was amazing, he chose women as the first witnesses of the resurrection. In a time when women, their witness, their testimony was not valid in any legal court. But Jesus chose women as the first witness of his resurrection. Jesus saw clearly, he acted accordingly. even though women technically in the day and time had no legal standing. He elevated women to a rightful place because they are created in the image of God. One thought I came across is this, is honor of women is not optional. As we look at 1 Peter 3:7, it says honor is not optional. It is a condition of spiritual vitality. It says in 1 Peter 3:7 that we're going to honor the woman, honor the wife, even as the weaker vessel, as being a co-heir with grace, that your prayers be not hindered. So, I really apologize. I'm sorry. So for us, that concept of imago Dei, when we think about that and we apply it in our lives, how many times do I dismiss my wife's thinking? How many times do I talk over or do I interrupt? How many times do I disrespect the women around me? Unfortunately for me, sometimes it's too much. It's too many times. But see, maturity is not measured by how much we can bench press or how much money I have in the bank. It is measured by how I treat somebody, my character. So the image, my co-heir. When I look at my wife, my sister, my daughter, I'm looking at a co-heir with Christ. My co-heir, my sister in Christ. I need to treat them that way. Honoring is really just not doing favor for women. Honoring is acknowledging the reality that God has declared before you were born. And as 1 Peter 3:7 is indicating, that dishonor is not just bad manners. When I disrespect the women, it's not just a bad manners. It is a theological statement of what I believe about God. Because God created that woman in his own image. If I am disrespecting and treating the women around me poorly, I'm treating an image bearer of God poorly. So my question, one of the questions I really stopped to ponder this week was, does the way I treat women, does the way I treat my daughter, does the way I treat my mom, does that match what I say I believe about God? Does that match what I say I believe about God? So, one of the things I would challenge us all today is I would audit our daily posture towards the women in our life. Do I treat them as the co-heir? Do I treat them as a person who is made in God's image? Because the way I treat those women around me shows and demonstrates what I believe about God. It's not just my personality. It's not I'm just a grumpy person. It's really an idea of, do I believe this person is created in the image of God? All right, number two. There are three practices of Christ-like honor. So we took a look at what this honor thing is and why I should do it. There are three things that I thought about this week that we should do to demonstrate this honor. All right, again, actions speak louder than my words. I can say that I honor women, but what does that mean for me in my actions? Number one, I'm going to see clearly. Well, Tom, what do you mean by that? Well, seeing clearly means that I'm going to actively listen, and this is where it gets personal for each and every one of us. I'm going to actively listen to the women around me. Actively listening. Well, what does that mean? Actively listening. In 1 Peter 3:7, 3:7. We have the words understanding. Live with our wives in an understanding way. We have to dwell with them according to knowledge. So what does that word knowledge mean? In the Greek, it's translated gnosis. Oh, that doesn't mean anything to me. Well, let's talk about that term for a second. Gnosis means that I'm supposed to have a deep understanding, a deep studied and intentional knowledge of my wife. One of them, I'm just going to, personal confession. Last Christmas, I struggled. Like, oh man, what am I going to get Carrie for Christmas? I don't know what to do. And I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. I could get her this. And I was searching Amazon all over the place. I could get her all of these different things because it's Christmas and I just get her a present. And my kids were like, Dad, no. This is what you need to do. Well, how did they know what my wife needed for Christmas? Well, because they knew, because they know their mom. They studied mom. They watched mom. And here I am. It convicted my heart. I don't know what my wife needs or wants for Christmas because I failed in this part of seeing clearly. I didn't spend the year studying my wife, watching my wife, understanding what thing it would help her in her daily walk. What thing, what activity, what time would she most enjoy? Because I was so wrapped up in myself. So, 1 Peter 3:7, it says that we need to dwell with them according to knowledge. We need to have a deep understanding of our wives, of our daughters, of the women around us, because we are students of them. We study them. We watch them. We listen to them. How many times are we so wrapped up in what's going on Facebook or on my phone, and I'm just doom scrolling, that my wife is talking to me and I'm half hearing what she's saying, and it goes in one ear and out the other ear, and then I go to bed and it's done. I've had it on multiple occasions where Carrie has said, well, I told you I was going here. I told you we were doing that. And I'm like, I don't remember. Well, why don't I remember? Well, because I wasn't actively seeing clearly. I wasn't actively listening. I tell you, this was a hard sermon to put together because a lot of these points convicted me directly. But then again, that's what the Bible does. All right? So, we're going to dwell with our wives according to understanding. Notice a deep, intimate knowledge. Peter is not telling the husbands that they need to just have a positive attitude or be positively attentive to your wife. I can be positively attentive to my wife and do the head nod. But that's not what Peter is asking me to do. Peter is asking me to have a deep knowledge of the people around us, of the women around us. The next one is I need to be aware of what I call the fix-it mentality. The fix-it mentality. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but when my wife comes to me or my daughters come to me and they say, Dad, we have this problem, what is your first reaction? Let's go fix it. The kids come to me, Dad, this tire is flat. All right, let's go fix it. Dad, there's a bug in the bathroom. Let's go fix it. Dad, I'm struggling with my class. I have a final exam. Well, let's go fix it. See, my gut reaction, the way that I kind of made up is I'm seeking to find a solution. Find it, help them out. But that is not what the women in our lives need. Sometimes they need just for me to listen. Proverbs 18:13 says that if I answer before I hear a matter, it is called folly and shame. What she needs for you to do is stay in the deep water long enough with her so you understand what she's carrying. So when Carrie comes home, when the kids come home from their markets, they were just at one yesterday, and what they're telling me all about their day, and all about the problems that they had at the market, or the struggles that they had. Again, my gut instinct is we're just going to fix that and change this, but that's not what they needed. They just needed me to listen to them and process what's going on. So women in our lives, sometimes just need for us to stop and listen to them, to understand what is going on in their lives. It goes back to seeing clearly, listening to them, active listening. I came across this quote. It said, ministry to the women in our lives often begins not with an answer, Ministry into the women in our lives often does not begin with an answer, but with a kind presence that says, I see you, I am here, and you are not carrying this alone. For them to know that I'm here, I'm the strength behind you, let's work through this together, oftentimes is exactly what they need. I also thought, as I thought about that statement, one of the lectures that we went through in our last semester was on the book of Job. Now, this isn't directly about women, but the concept still applies. When Job went through all of his trials, he had 4 friends that came to him. So why did his friends come? Well, his friends came to comfort Job, and his friends came to mourn with him. All of this loss, and Job's friends come to comfort and mourn with him. And then it's interesting. Job's friends, did they come in right away and say, Job, you got to do this, and you got to do this other thing, and we're just going to make it all better? No. Job's friends, they came to comfort and mourn, and they sat with him silent for 7 days. Likely that they sat with him to give him that space, to give him that comfort. Are we following that example with our wives, with our moms, with our daughters, with the women around us? Are we giving them that space to let them know we're here? I'm hearing you. Have you asked recently, how are you really doing? I ask my wife every morning, how you sleep good? How's your day? When I come home from work, did you have a good day? Well, it's kind of like one of those perfunctory questions, you just ask. It's kind of like how you doing today? And everybody responds, I'm doing good. All right, but the thing is, how are you really doing? And then take time to be silent and listen, truly listen. This one was hard for me. It says, resist the impulse to move on to a solution before you hear the whole thing. Resist the impulse. Resist the fix-it mentality. Again, guys, for me, that's hard. Might not be as hard for you, but how do I do that? Well, I listen, and God helps. All right? So what? The women in our life, they need not an answer first. They need to know that they're heard. All right, so we have serving, seeing clearly, serving sacrificial. Let's go into that run real quick. Serving sacrificial, the sacrificial presence. I wanted to stop on this one, Ephesians 5:25 to 5:27. Ephesians 5:25. It says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ did what? Loved the church. All right. And he gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word, that he might present to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. Let's stop and pause on 5:25 for a second. It says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. So when Christ came, did he come sort of, kind of? No. When Christ came, Jesus was all in. He was all in on the mission of salvation and the mission of redemption. He wasn't like, sort of, maybe I'll redeem these people. Maybe I'll die on the cross. I don't know. No, this was a rescue mission that he was all in for. It is an example that we have for our wives too. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. I also wanted to point out, Ephesians 5:25 does not say, husbands, lead your wives. Now, are we supposed to lead our wives? Yes, but this verse says that first we need to do what? We have to love them. We have to love our wives. For Christ, it wasn't about comfort. For Christ, it was pointing to the crucifixion, because he knew that was what his mission was. Christ When he came, he didn't send a representative. He was all in himself, pulled on the full weight of being a human, and died on the cross for our sins. As such, we need to have the same and display the same love for our wives, for our moms, for our daughters, for the women around us. There are 3 areas. Three areas that I need to have that level of presence with my wife, with my family. Number 1 is physical presence. Physical presence. If I'm not there, I cannot be engaged. Physical presence, my body in the room, engaged in actual life with my family, engaged with my wife. Date nights are an amazing thing. I don't know why in the busyness of life it just kind of goes. All right? Physical presence. Second of all, is emotional presence. Your heart is available to the people in your household. Not walled off behind a work, exhaustion, or pride. Emotional presence. And then the last one is spiritual presence. This is the question. Are you actively leading your family towards God? And are you praying with them? Modeling what it looks like. Modeling that spirituality. The 3 areas of presence are huge because if there is an absence of any one of them, if I'm not there physically, I cannot be there emotionally, and I cannot be there spiritually. If I'm there physically, but not emotionally, I'm just a body in the room. There is no connection. I'm not showing and demonstrating that love. And if I'm not being the spiritual leader, it doesn't matter that I'm there physically. It doesn't necessarily matter that I'm there emotionally, because the spiritual leadership is what we were called to do. An application point, the greatest gift, I love this one that I found. It says the greatest gift to a mother is often not a gesture on a special occasion. It is a man who shows up fully to the daily, unglamorous, shared labor of life. Showing up. So, happy Mother's Day, Mom. I can bring you the flowers. That's a great start. But one of the best gifts you can give is showing up daily, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Last, we have protecting fiercely. A posture of we have protecting fiercely, a posture of purity and honor. I wanted us to also pause on here. In 1 Timothy 5:2, Paul is instructing Timothy, and he says that there needs to be a practical and countercultural command that we need to treat young women as sisters in all purity. Well, what does that mean? The purity. 1 Timothy 5:2, we need to watch how we look, how we speak, and how we act towards women in every context. You know, there's this thing, we've heard of it, is the locker room talk. We've heard, and I think somebody mentioned it, Scott, you mentioned it, about somebody being on, the keyboard warrior on social media. In those situations, how am I representing my wife? How am I representing my family, the women around me? Am I presenting them in a good way? But that's one thing. But it's also about how I look at other women. Does my wife, does my family, do my daughters know that that is pure? That is a trust that is built up over time. All right? How I think and how I act towards women. Again, I go back to the example of Job. In Job 31:1, we find that Job makes a covenant with his eyes even before temptation happens. Guys, question, have you made that covenant with your eyes before the temptation happens, even specifically teens? Have you made a covenant with your eyes to remain pure before that temptation happens? Because I cannot rely on that covenant if I'm in the middle of it. I have to predetermine this is how I'm going to be. The orientation of my heart has to be oriented towards purity before I ever get to the point of temptation. Because if I'm in the middle of it, it is a snap decision, and because of my sinful heart, what is my heart going to do? My heart is going to fail, because we all know the heart is desperately wicked who knows it. So I have to predetermine that I'm going to remain pure, not only for my wife and not only for my daughters and not only for my family, but I need to do that because that's what God commands. That's what God commands of me as a father and a man. The other thing I wanted to point out with this one is that the culture of the safety in the church, the purity in the church, isn't necessarily built in the pulpit. Again, actions speak louder than words. So I appreciate Pastor and the messages that he brings every Sunday, teaching us the Word of God. But that's not enough. The culture of safety in the church is built by the daily rhythm and routine of men in the church. What is your daily rhythm? What is your daily routine? I'm so thankful I got into the Proverbs, into the Proverbs group, and we're reading Proverbs every day. Every day. And I'm so thankful that there's an accountability with that. So when I skip, I know I skipped and I have to go back and do it. But the point is this: are you in the Word every day? Is that the daily rhythm? Is that your daily habit? Or do I just come to church because it's the thing to do on a Sunday morning? I come to church on Wednesday because that's the thing to do on Wednesday. That should not be true. Because purity is not just about what I do. It is about the honor and the posture of honor that I choose to maintain in my thoughts, in my words, and my actions. The question is, am I treating her with honor due to a sister in Christ? She is. And we go back to where we started, Genesis 1:27. God made her in the image of God, just as he made me. Quickly, I'm going to go through the last part here. The last one is the legacy charge. And for this one, I looked at Deuteronomy 6:6. In Deuteronomy 6:6, we have, I'm sure you guys could quote it. Deuteronomy 6:6, it says, "And all these words which I command thee this day, thou shalt be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest in the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." We've heard some good thoughts today. We're going to let them sit and resonate in our hearts. But but what good does it do that I'm pure? I learned. The point is that idea of honor cannot stop, and it cannot rest just with me. We have to build a legacy with our younger generation. Because if it stops with me, then what? I need future generations to know. For the boys, for the teens, you're not practicing to become a man of honor someday. Your practice, your ability, your habits right now are determining what you are now and what you will be. I cannot decide, when I'm 20, then I'm going to start digging into the Word. I cannot decide, later when I have a wife, I'm going to start honoring the women around me. I cannot decide when, some point in the future, I'm going to be pure then. The habits are built now. Tom, I screwed up. It's okay, get back on the horse. Because I'm going to create that pattern now. From today moving forward. Now for the men. Guys, the teens, they're watching. They're watching us. This past week, I had the opportunity to be in third grade. It was so much fun. It was. Honestly, it was. And the boys in that class, they're looking up. They're watching. Well, how does Mr. Doughty behave? Well, what does Mr. Doughty expect? Why are they watching? Well, they're watching because that is what they're going to, they're watching somebody. So who do I want them to watch? What example do I want them to watch? Well, I need to create that legacy. So they could watch the rapper on TV. They could watch whatever influence they have, Facebook, whatever it is. Or they could watch my example. Guys, for the generation coming up, let's give them a good example of treating women and honoring the women in our room. The boys in the room, they're downloading what manhood looks like from you. So that's one of the reasons I am so thankful I'm going to be able to be part of HCA next year. Because the boys coming up, they need godly influences. I've already had a mom say, hey, I put my son in, I want him in third grade because I want him to be in your class because he needs a godly influence in his life. He needs somebody to look up to. And if it's not me, who is it? I would rather it be me with a godly influence because we need to build them up. We're going to close with this. They're watching. They're always watching. The boys are always watching. Who are they watching? Are they watching an example with a godly influence? Or are they just watching what they see on TV? We want them to align with the example of Christ. So if I want them to align with the example of Christ and they're watching me, guys, we need to align with the example of Christ. We have to do that. Again, they're always watching. You're the curriculum.